In this video, I'm going to show you how to make a campfire similar animation. Okay, first thing when you open up, you're going to delete the box that's there. And then we're going to just create a really simple log. If you want to create something more realistic or download one offline, you can absolutely do that. But for this demonstration, I'm just going to make a single log. So I'm going to put a cylinder in, and then I'm going to hit the R key to rotate. Next, I'm going to scale, so I'm going to make it just a little bit smaller and then bring it up so it's sitting on the ground. Now I'm going to add just a plane, and again I'm going to hit the S key to scale that so that we do have some ground. I'm going to make my ground a color so that it'll give us a little bit of a difference whenever we do our animation. So I'm going to hit that material key and just pick a color for the ground. So we'll just do like a nice green. For the log, I'm also going to do the same thing. So I'm going to open up. I can choose one of these if I want to, but it's a log. So I'm going to, let's get it a nice dark brown. So I'm going to use that, get a nice dark brown. And then you have in your texture options, if you hit new, you can choose wood. And there is a ring noise one that looks pretty realistic. So you can do that if you'd like to try to make it look a little bit more realistic. Okay, now that we have that there, we're going to move on to our next step. Okay, so we're going to add a plane underneath, and I need to see where it is, so I'm going to hit the N key. And I'm going to hit 0 because I want this right in the center, 0 and 0. So I want that right in the center there of my log. Okay, so once I have that, scale it down again. So hit the S key. I'm going to shrink that down a little closer to my log size so that I have a good similar log size there. So now what we need to do is we need to make this emit some fire. So for that, I'm going to come to the particles, these little stars here, and I'm going to click that button. I'm then going to click New. Once I've clicked New, now I'm going to come up with all the settings that I can choose from on my particles. Okay, so now I'm going to change some numbers here. So I'm going to try, and you can play with these numbers, but I'm going to try 4,000. I want to make those random because fire, doesn't really have a consistent flicker to it. So it's going to have random parts to it. So I'm going to do that as well. But I do want you guys to try playing around with some of these and see if some of those change it. And you can see it by hitting play. Now, you'll notice my little particles aren't going anywhere. And the reason for that is that we have gravity. So I'm going to come down to field weights, and I'm going to see that the gravity is marked at 1, but I'm going to change that to -5. So now, all of a sudden, you'll see all of those particles shooting up. We can also, at this point, shorten our animation to 100 so that we don't have quite so long of an animation. Now, you can play around with these numbers. You can change the gravity to a different negative number, see if you like that look. If you think this is too many particles, you can come back up. You can change the number to a different number if you want to make your fire not so strong. Whatever you want to do to get the look that you are looking for. You're going to play around with those settings in there. So play around with the settings, and then when you're ready, move on to our next step. Now that we have our image set up the way that we want to, and we have our particles going the way we want to, we're going to right-click and select that small plane again, and we're going to be creating a new material for the speckles, our particles that are coming up. So when you come in there, it's going to start with surface, but we're going to actually use halo. And halo is going to give it some of those little speckles and give it a glow. So what we're going to do is you have a lot of different options in here. And again, this is going to be one where you get to pick. What do you want to do? So go through, try some of these out. When you think you have a good one, click the little render button and see what it looks like. And then see what looks the most like fire to you. I'm going to go ahead and put some settings in there, and you can choose to do similar ones if you want to. If not, you can do whatever kind of settings you want to do. Okay, so I'm going to set the alpha to 0.8. Give them a little bit of transparency. The size, I don't know that I want them that large, so I'm going to set those to 0.15. And that's going to make them a little bit smaller for that halo. Then I'm going to take a look at my other settings. There's a hardness setting, and 50 is fine, but you can play around with that and see if you like that. You can take a look at add, and this will combine the halos together, so it'll add some layers to halos. So I'm going to do 0.9. And then I can take and kind of look at my settings and decide if that's where I want to be. Then I'm going to click the texture button too. Okay, so I have those set up how I want to, but now I'm going to go up to the texture button. So I'm going to go up to texture and I'm going to click new. Now that I'm there, I'm going to pick a texture that I think would look good for this. So I'm going to pick clouds. Go ahead and pick whatever you think might look good. You can test it, see what it looks like, and if it's something that maybe you don't like, then you can switch it. You can choose a color for your texture, because you don't want to just have it be a grayscale. We want this to have some bright colors. And to change that color, I'm going to click that ramp button that's right there. And then I'm going to add some colors in here that you would see if you were looking at an actual fire. So we would see that red. I'm going to lighten that up a little bit. We would definitely see some yellow and some oranges. So I'm just going to add a couple markers in here. And then I'm going to play around with those colors. This is an area that you can have some fun with. If you want to make it like blue and purple and different colors, you can do that. If whatever colors you want to make it, it's totally up to you. I'm going to do a little bit more regular fire, and just see what that looks like, and then we'll go from there. So I'm going to play around with that and get it where I want it to be. Okay, now that you think you have it where you want to come up to the camera option and then click your render button. And that's going to show you what your image is going to look like. So if this is good, then you can move on to the next step. If you are happy with your animation at this point, you can go ahead and just stop. But if you'd like to add another step to it, then you're going to come up to plane, click on that to make a new plane. Now we're going to move it over just so that we can see it. The other option you have is putting it on a different layer, but it's just as easy just to put it off to the side. We're going to make it smaller. You want to make it about the size that would fit underneath that log that we made. Once we have that, making sure that it's selected with those little yellow lines around it, we're going to come to Object, Quick Effects, Quick Smoke. And that's going to put this big yellow box around it. You're going to come over here and make sure that you have Smoke and Fire selected and that you have the Render Smoke Objects checked. Then you're going to get your little cursor, and if everything is set up correctly, you should see an animation of fire and smoke coming up from that box. Now, you can do some different things with this if you come into the Physics tab again. You can change your smoke, you can change the speed, you can change the veracity of the flames. All of this stuff here you can play around with. If you'd like to add a texture or you want to change the thickness of your smoke, all of that is in here. So if you want to play around with that, you can come over here into your Physics tab, go through, play around with those, but I do suggest if you're going to change anything to save it first, then make those changes, because if you make the changes and you're not able to undo them by Control-Z, you can just reopen the previous file. So I'm going to pull my animation pane back so I can see my plane there. And now I'm just going to move it over so that it is over near my log. So making sure it's lined up and using my little guys to move that around. And I'm going to zoom out again. And now I need to move this box. And what this box does is it contains the smoke and the flames. Now you can make that bigger if you want, just hitting the S key and dragging it, or you can make it smaller, whichever you prefer. Now I'm going to just take and one more time, just hit that play button, make sure that's where I want it to be, see if it's doing what I want it to do. I think that looks good. So now I'm going to render. Now be aware that this is going to take a long time to render. So don't let it go over 100. We want to keep those frames a little bit lower than 250. And don't render when you have a test or a quiz due right afterwards. So make sure that you are rendering when you have some time to just let your computer sit.